Right now, the world has a new pope, the first from the United States, and we call him Leo XIV.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
The successor of St. Peter and the future of the Catholic Church. History has been written, and Currents News was there.
Who is Pope Leo XIV, and what kind of shepherd will he be? The crowds here are happy he's the one. I'm Michelle Powers. That's next.
I'm Katie Vasquez, and I'm with Diocese of Brooklyn in St. Peter's Square, and I have their first thoughts.
St. Peter's Square alive with joy. Habemus Papam. And so is the Diocese of Brooklyn and beyond.
I've found them to be very good to me and to the people in Brooklyn and Queens.
Right now on Currents News, bells toll as we meet the Holy Father from America.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace be with you all. Those were Pope Leo XIV's first words, the first American to ascend the throne of St. Peter. Hi, I'm Christine Persichetti. Welcome to our special celebrating the 267th pontiff, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, a man from Chicago, an election that was once thought to be unbelievable, even unthinkable. But now we have an American pope. We begin with Currents News' Michelle Powers, who was in St. Peter's Square to witness history. Michelle.
Christine, it was a belief held for centuries. At first, it was just because American cardinals from the New World usually arrived too late to get to Rome to even vote. Then it was because people said the church shouldn't have a superpower pope. The U.S. was considered too powerful in the world to also put a man on the throne of St. Peter. But Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost defied those odds. Let's take a look back at the night his name echoed across St. Peter's Square. Just after 7 o'clock, the words Habemus Papam echoed across Vatican City, followed by a thunderous applause.
Habemus Papam.
As the world met their new Holy Father, who stepped out on the balcony as Pope Leo XIV.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
But just hours ago, he was known as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops and president of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America. He was chosen 2 days into the conclave, and he's the first pope from the United States. For hours, thousands waited, their eyes fixed on the Sistine Chapel chimney. When the white smoke finally came, bells rang and emotions overflowed.
When I heard that white smoke is coming, we ran to come here to see Pope.
It was not what I was expecting or what the people around me were expecting, so it was really cool to see.
I was very happy. It's an intense feeling. I can speak. I'm so excited, you know.
The Pope's first message from the balcony struck a chord, calling for the Church to build bridges and engage in dialogue.
To do it all together, Christian and not, but we hope in a world of peace.
Gives me goosebumps watching that back, but let's not forget that it was very likely Cardinal Prevost was on the Cardinal's radar because he was so visible. Pope Francis appointed him to head the department in charge of bishops, so he met many, many people in the church, Christine.
Michelle, tell me more about that night. How did the day start? What were you thinking?
So our day started really early because there's those 4 ballots that you have to be there. So we'd wake up at 6 o'clock and we'd run down to the square because if you're not there, someone else is, and that's a problem. And you would think that it could happen at any time. So we'd get down there at around 7, and then we were hanging out for the day. So it was an early ballot, and we were on top of the Dicastery building. We were welcomed there by Monsignor Pham, who works there and who ministers there. And I had 2 shows ready. I had one if no one was elected and if someone was. And I said to myself, I think it's going to happen. And I was running out, and Melissa Corsi, who was also there that night, was enjoying the view, and she's like, where are you going? I was like, I have to run to the bathroom. I have to make sure I get my computer, and I have to redo this show because it's going to happen. Right. I sat down. 5 minutes later, she was screaming about white smoke, and I was like, you're happy? You're really excited? Who is it? But then I was like, we got to do a whole new show.
What was it like reporting on the conclave? This is history.
Yeah, so that was really exciting for me and Katie. So it was me and Katie there, and usually the teams are really large. So it was just the 2 of us, and it was kind of fun people watching the show don't know that it's really just you two and just our team of 6 putting it together. So when you can't tell, and that's such a great testament. So it was really fun to be there for that history, but also to present it in such a beautiful way. We couldn't believe that we were there not only to witness a pope, but the first American. It's great. Yeah.
So exciting, and you guys did a great job. Michelle Powers, thanks so much.
Thank you, Christine. We'll never forget it. Can't stop saying that.
So out of all the possible names, why did Cardinal Robert Prevost choose the name Leo? Well, he told the cardinals that elected him he was inspired by Pope Leo XIII, a pontiff who fought against dehumanization during the Industrial Revolution in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
E oggi la Chiesa offre a tutti il suo patrimonio di dottrina sociale per rispondere a un'altra rivoluzione industriale e agli sviluppi dell'intelligenza artificiale che comportano nuove sfide per la difesa della dignità umana, della giustizia e del lavoro.
In addition to Pope Leo XIII, a dozen other popes have shared the same name as the new pontiff. The first to bear the name was Pope Leo the Great. He served in the 5th century and was known as a bold defender of the faith and is remembered for persuading Attila the Hun to spare Italy from invasion. St. Leo II was elected 2 centuries later, but reigned for just under 9 months. St. Leo III led the church for 2 decades and crowned Charlemagne Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800. St. Leo IV restored several churches in Rome after Muslim invaders plundered the sacred buildings. And the most recently sainted, Leo IX, brought reform to the church, reiterating mandatory clerical celibacy and defending the church's belief in Christ's real presence in the Eucharist. Now to the new Pope's coat of arms. It blends both Marian and Augustinian elements and includes the traditional papal symbols of the crossed keys of St. Peter and episcopal mitre. The upper left-hand corner of the shield bears a fleur-de-lis set against a light blue background. On the bottom right, a red heart topped by a flame and pierced by an arrow is the emblem of the Order of St. Augustine. The Pope's motto, in illo uno unum, in the one we are one, sits at the bottom of the coat of arms. That motto echoes St. Augustine's sermon on Psalm 127, where he explains that although we Christians are many, in the one Christ we are one. The blue fields evoke the heights of heaven, with the lily as a classic symbol of the Blessed Virgin Mary. All of Pope Leo's choices are informed by his life before he became the successor of St. Peter. Let's take a look at his journey to the papacy. The first American pope, Pope Leo XIV, born in Chicago, Illinois, raised by a father with French and Italian roots and a mother of Spanish descent. The new Holy Father studied math at Villanova University before he was ordained a priest in 1982. 3 years later, then Father Robert Prevost began missionary work in Peru. He returned to the States and then went back to the South American country a couple years later. Prevost stayed there for more than a decade, even becoming a Peruvian citizen. He served as Bishop of Chiclayo. In January of 2023, Pope Francis appointed Prevost prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, a powerful position responsible for selecting bishops. 8 months later, in September of 2023, Pope Francis elevated him to the rank of cardinal. The 69-year-old is the first Augustinian pope and actually led the religious order for more than a decade as their prior general. Pope Leo XIV is considered an experienced leader and is expected to build upon Pope Francis's reforms. He reportedly shares Pope Francis's vision on the environment, outreach to the poor and migrants, and meeting people where they are. The new pontiff also supported his predecessor's decision to allow divorced and civilly remarried Catholics to receive Holy Communion. The new pope speaks English, Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese, and can read Latin and German. He's an American, a missionary, and now the 267th Pope of the Catholic Church. Clergy from the Diocese of Brooklyn were among the thousands in St. Peter's Square to greet our new pope. It was a day they will never forget.
We have a pope. Habemus Papam.
Currents News got a bird's eye view of St. Peter's Square on the day the Pope was elected atop the Dicastery building with Monsignor Quang Pham and Father Will Kingsley Undi. They were excited that Pope Leo XIV was elected on the second day of the conclave, which they say means there was great unity among the cardinals, which is great for the church.
Christ is our true shepherd, and the Pope is his visible presence here. And with the presence of the Pope, we have the reassurance that Christ indeed has never left his church unattended for, uncared for.
He's the one who helped us to fulfill our mission as Christians and as a priest working here in the Holy See. I can tell you it's definitely great news to know I have a new boss.
Both men say they are excited and happy to meet the new pontiff and are looking forward to working with him. The shepherd of the Diocese of Brooklyn, Bishop Robert Brennan, marked the start of the new papacy by joining us here at Currents News. The bishop shared with us his thoughts on the selection of Pope Leo XIV, calling it an historic day for the church and for America.
Born and raised in Chicago, went to school in Philadelphia. He was a math major, by the way. I kind of identify with that.
That's right.
At a rival school, Villanova to St. John's.
That's okay.
But that's okay. And then an Augustinian priest and served that congregation. But you know what I love? He's a missionary. We've had popes who've had missionary spirits in this past decade who encourage us to be missionary in nature, but he is an actual missionary. And now he's taking on a new mission. I mean, he kind of left a lot behind to go off and serve the poor in Peru. At the request of Pope Francis, he left doing what he loved doing to serve and help Pope Francis in his role, leading the dicastery for bishops. And now the Lord is asking him really to leave everything behind.
Absolutely.
And to be the Bishop of Rome, but the shepherd of the world.
Right. And he's only 69 years old. He's only been a cardinal for less than 2 years, I believe. What has your experience been with him?
It's a kind of a distant one. I mean, I know who he is. I think I've found him to be very good to me and to the people in Brooklyn and Queens. But my only interaction has been more in correspondence, the regular office correspondence that we would have. But he seems eager to step up and to be of help.
So many Catholics wanted somebody like Pope Francis. Cardinal Prevost long embraced marginalized groups like Pope Francis. He fights for the migrants and poor, the environment. What do you expect from this new papacy?
Well, I would look to his opening comments. And, yes, with great admiration for Pope Francis, we're going to have to let him be his own man. But I know what you're saying. The themes that he's going to pick up are very similar. And of course, he collaborated with Pope Francis in those. But, that greeting at the beginning and at the end, the beginning was, peace be with you. I bring to you the message of the risen Christ on the night of the resurrection. Pace convoi, I wish you peace. And then he closed by offering a word of peace and blessing. May peace be with you and with all your family. Those are just very human, very touching things. Yes, somewhat reminiscent of Pope Francis. Of course, stopping in the middle of his talk and saying, why don't we say a Hail Mary? We've seen Pope Francis do that a few times. So I think you'll see some of that style, but also that consistency of the magisterium of the church, of the teaching, of going out into the fields.
Thank you, Bishop Brennan, for being with us in those exciting moments immediately after the announcement. In the meantime, Pope Leo spent some of his first moments with members of the press. More than 1,000 members of the media gathered at the Vatican in the days after the election, where the pontiff spoke to them foremost about renewed calls for peace. He implored reporters to continue to shed light on conflicts around the world, and he called for the release of imprisoned journalists.
Let me therefore reiterate today the Church's solidarity with journalists who are imprisoned for seeking and reporting the truth, while also asking for their release.
The Holy Father also called on everyone to safeguard the precious gifts of freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Bishop Robert Brennan celebrated a Mass for our new Holy Father a day after Pope Leo XIV was formally installed as the leader of the Catholic Church. Parishioners joined the Brooklyn Shepherd at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James. They may be thousands of miles away, but that's not stopping the faithful in Brooklyn and Queens from celebrating the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV.
I think he's going to bring his own brand of leadership and challenge us in new ways. By doing that, we begin this new era, a new epoch in the church.
Peace be with you.
Bishop Robert Brennan celebrated a Mass of thanksgiving and prayer for Pope Leo, saying the new pontiff wants to unify the church.
I think he's making that his principal desire. Love and unity, he said. Love and unity. Even his motto, in the one Christ we are one. He's repeating that over and over again. I'm looking forward to the ways that he's going to do that, because we do need to be drawing closer in unity ourselves.
Many in the pews here at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James are still getting to know our new Pope, including Mally Joseph, an 11th grader from Bishop Laughlin High School.
I like him so far from what I've heard. He seems very nice and very charismatic and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a really big role to fill in Pope Francis, because Pope Francis, honestly, was really cool.
But Mally says she already feels a connection to the Holy Father, the first Pope from the United States.
You know, when the Pope isn't from here, you know, it's like, oh, you know who they are, but you don't really have a tie to them. But since the Pope is American and from Chicago, it makes me feel more connected to him.
Many attending the Mass at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James expressed hope for the future of the church under Pope Leo XIV. There's a lot more news headed your way. A seminarian from the Diocese of Brooklyn was front and center for the historic moment when the world learned there was a new pope. Why it almost didn't happen. Plus, joy in Chicago. Students at Mount Carmel Academy erupt in cheers after learning the next pope is from their hometown. And we'll take you thousands of miles away to Peru, where there's also pride for the new pope, who they claim as one of their own.
We're students here for the entire semester, so we were kind of talking about it last week, like, oh, what if it's an American pope? And then we were like, nah, it's probably not going to happen. But it's so cool to have someone in the throne of St. Peter that grew up like us and understands us. So hopefully he makes a visit back home soon.
I grabbed one of my friends, like, Provost, American, it's American.
A Diocese of Brooklyn seminarian's front row seat to history. We follow his footsteps into St. Peter's Square and relive the moment where faith and destiny collided. Deacon Paulo Salazar almost didn't make it into the square on May 8th, but something told him he had to get down to the Vatican. Currents News' Katie Vasquez joins us now. Katie, tell us, what was it?
Well, that's right, Christine. A day later, I could actually sense the sheer excitement and joy that Deacon Paulo Salazar had witnessing history. The Queen's resident is currently studying for the priesthood in the Eternal City and had 8 hours of classes. He was obviously exhausted and debated whether to go to the square, but says something in his heart told him he needed to be there.
I'm in a little disbelief that I got that close.
Deacon Paulo Salazar returns to St. Peter's Square on Friday, already trying to relive history.
This is where I was yesterday.
The seminarian from the Diocese of Brooklyn had 8 hours of classes at the Pontifical North American College on Thursday. Then he headed out with 10 other men in formation to St. Peter's Square, 10 minutes before the white smoke started.
It was a tremendous event, a very historical moment for me, a very emotional moment as a Catholic to witness.
So what was it like standing in this spot?
It was very emotional, being here with the thousands of other faithful.
When he heard the name of the new Holy Father, he couldn't contain his joy.
I think I grabbed one of my friends, like, Provost, American, it's American. And then hearing Pope Leo XIV, it was just a very a very grace-filled moment.
Deacon Paolo says there was lots of prayers before they got their first look at the new pontiff, a man who they could already feel a connection to.
I think for us, there's an even greater fervor of just sort of sharing that American blood that runs through our bodies, and it was just a beautiful moment to experience it, and especially with it being an American Pope.
But this wasn't the first time the St. Joan of Arc parishioner met the American Pope. Then Cardinal Robert Prevost celebrated Mass at the seminary on Thanksgiving Day.
I think we sent him home with a couple slices of pumpkin pie. He may have liked it a lot. I got a chance to meet him before he was even Pope Leo XIV, and it just speaks to just his personality of just a really prayerful man, a very humble man, a really charitable man. And I'm just very much looking forward to how he is and how he'll reign as the Roman Pontiff.
And Deacon Paolo hasn't stopped his prayers for the Holy Father.
I went to go to the tomb of St. Peter to pray for the Holy Father, asking Peter to intercede for him and to give him that strength that he had to lead the flock.
Deacon Paolo is eager to see how Pope Leo XIV leads the church. He will be ordained in the Diocese of Brooklyn in June and is looking forward to following the direction of his new boss, the pontiff.
Wow. So tell me more about how he debated going.
Well, you know, he had a long day of classes. He was really tired, and he wasn't expecting it to happen that day, the white smoke. But he decided, you know, I'm going to give it a shot. It took about 40 minutes to get through security, and then he finally got his spot, which is actually really close to the balcony and where everything happened.
That's so cool. Was he expecting an American Pope?
No, well, he said they all were praying for whoever the man that came out and spoke to the crowds would be. But he said making it an American, it kind of made it more special in that moment and just kind of to witness all of that.
And I believe his seminary has ties to the United States, is that right?
Yeah, he said his seminary is kind of based on forging the relationship between the church in America and the Holy Father. So this kind of, he calls it divine providence, and said it was a very special moment in his life to be there and witness it with an American Pope.
What a great story. Thanks so much, Katie.
Thanks.
Deacon Paolo wasn't the only student excited about the newest Holy Father. One school in Chicago turned the papal conclave into a real-life learning experience. And as you can imagine, the kids were overjoyed when they learned that the cardinals in Vatican City elected a pope from their hometown. Kirsty's Jenna McDermott has the story.
Who would you vote for? Before the big papal news, a conclave played out on a smaller scale.
It is time for our conclave to begin.
At Chicago's Our Lady of Mount Carmel Academy, 20 kid cardinals like Cameron Smith dressed the part and felt it too.
Wow, there's so many good options.
Just 2 days after kids chose fourth grader Augie Wilk in a mock conclave,
we did it!
Cardinals in Rome elected a pope with ties to home.
And from Chicago, you were all like screaming, USA, USA. And if you had a flag, it would be immediately swiped from you.
Yeah. The kids who took part in the mock conclave already sense a real connection to Pope Leo XIV.
We kind of know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to be a cardinal and shouting and screaming. He knows what it feels like to be Pope.
Since I chose the name Augustine for the Pope in the mock conclave, and he chose to follow the order of St. Augustine.
You'd want to be it, but you don't want to be. An interesting answer.
Taking part in a conclave is hard to top.
Yeah.
Now they can only hope a pope pays a visit. Jenna McDermott, Currents News.
So cute. So if Chicago is Pope Leo's hometown, where's his home church? Well, it's located on the city's south side, and it's been in disrepair for more than a decade. Now people want landmark status. Pope Leo XIV and his family were parishioners here at St. Mary of the Assumption back in the 1950s and 60s. A once bustling parish, it's been vacant since 2011. But since Pope Leo's election to the papacy, the faithful are bringing renewed life to the once forgotten parish, making pilgrimages to the site, including preservationists seeking a landmark designation to preserve its future.
I think it's going to end up being a destination place for people around the world, you know, to see his birthplace, his birth home.
The only thing to really protect a landmark building with teeth, to keep it from being demolished or harmed, is a Chicago landmark designation.
Preservation Chicago says they also wish to create a landmark district with many other sites associated with the Pope, including his childhood home, and will take their case to the commission. And in Peru, the Holy Father's adopted home, the immense pride was clearly evident as the name of the new pope was revealed. Pope Leo XIV was sent to work as a missionary in northern Peru in 1985, where he lived and worked for many years, eventually becoming a Peruvian citizen in 2015. It was in the Peruvian city of Chiclayo where Robert Prevost was ordained a bishop, and it's where he's warmly remembered and widely celebrated. Stefano Pazzibone has the story.
A new pope is unveiled 6,000 miles away from Rome. Welcome to Chiclayo, where Robert Prevost lived much of his adult life and where virtually everyone seems to have a story about the new pontiff. I interviewed him once, one of those people that light you up just by talking, says Antoine Bravo, a local journalist proudly holding today's newspaper in her hands.
Here you can see the title says, "We have a pope from Chiclayo."
Leo XIV first moved to Peru in 1985 as a missionary. By 2014, he was the bishop of this city. His dedication to the poor and the most vulnerable still evident among those who knew him best, like Noelia Ayala.
¿Qué es esto, Noelia? ¿Qué?
Bueno, esta es una planta de oxígeno.
A plant for oxygen that we have thanks to Cardinal Prevost, she says.
He's probably saved many lives.
Salvó muchas vidas.
A lot. We had to work 3 shifts because there were so many people that needed oxygen during the pandemic. Some of the gas tanks still have the names of the patients. Prevost made an impact on the lives of many. Peruvians and migrants too.
Esta iglesia está muy linda, ¿eh?
Hermosa.
An issue that puts the first American pope at odds with the current US administration.
Do you remember when you first met him?
Sí, tengo fotos.
So this is you, this is him, the Venezuelan flag, definitely a pope that would speak to the migrant community.
Lisbeth, who came to Chiclayo in 2018, was one of the beneficiaries of the programs for migrants that Prevost established.
Do you think that now that he's in Rome, he can become a voice for all the migrants, as migration has become such a controversial topic in our society?
He advocated for migrants so much here. I'm sure he will keep doing that, and will work towards that peace where we can all have a place in the countries where we are, she says.
That was Stefano Pazzibone reporting from Peru. The Holy Father's deep bond with the people of Peru is said to be rooted in his embrace of their customs. He was a fixture at festivals and took part in local traditions. Still to come on Currents News, a heartwarming moment for the new Holy Father and a memory a little girl will cherish for the rest of her life. Plus, we'll meet a nun who taught a young Robert Prevost and helped shape him into the man he is today.
I'm so happy. I'm happy that he talks about peace and to build a bridge.
Oh, very joyful, happy. At least the church now has a shepherd.
There have been many firsts for the Holy Father, but this one was especially heartwarming. The new Pope's first official signature, but it wasn't for church business. Instead, it was a request from a little girl. She asked the new Pope to bless and sign her Bible when he visited residents of the building where he stayed before the conclave. It's no doubt a memory she will keep for a lifetime. The election of the first American Pope is still sinking in for so many, especially for those who knew him before he was elected as St. Peter's successor. But for one nun who taught a young Robert Prevost, this is nothing short of surreal. Currents News' Jenna McDermott has the story.
I was overwhelmed by an emotion I can't even describe. I mean, it didn't seem real.
That's how Sister Diane Brigant describes the moment she and the world learned the man she's known as Robert Bob Prevost was introduced as Pope Leo XIV.
I taught the Pope how to understand the Bible. you don't figure that's going to be part of your life. It sounds so strange, you know, but I did.
It was during the 1978-79 school year at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago where Sister Diane first met the man she called Bob. The young 20-something seminarian took Brigant's Intro to the Old Testament class his first year at the school and subsequent classes after that.
He was a very good student. He was an A student. And he was always on time, you know, which means he's reliable.
Brigant, who taught at CTU for 45 years, says it was about a decade ago when she last saw her friend during an ordination for another priest in Chicago. She sent her friend Bob an email a couple of years ago after he was made a cardinal, not to congratulate him, but to thank him for the kind of ministry that brought him to the attention of the Holy Father. Now that he's the Holy Father, Brigant believes Pope Leo will continue serving like he always has, including as a missionary in Peru.
He's 20 years with the poor in a foreign country, so committed to them, he becomes a national, a citizen. And you don't turn that off. First of all, it's got to be there for you to stay there for 20 years. So he's got that kind of a commitment. And that he names himself after Leo XIII, who was the champion of the working class.
While he's the first American to be elected Pope, Brigant says Pope Leo is fair and he will not show any favoritism to his home country because he understands the real reason for his latest mission.
His responsibility is bigger than the United States. Maybe in his heart, that's his country. But he realizes his heart's got to be bigger.
Sister Diane Brigant will not travel to Pope Leo's installation, but she says officials with Catholic Theological Union will be there for the ceremony. Jenna McDermott, Currents News.
She taught the Pope the Bible. That is so funny. And that is your Pope Leo XIV special. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you tonight with the moment 1.4 billion Catholics welcome the first American Pope home.
Papam. La pace sia con tutti voi. Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maniat semper.